to the Athletes in Motion podcast, From Race to Recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Kenny, how are you?
I am fantastic. I am also very excited to welcome Dustin Ortiz. Thank you for coming to our program.
Dustin, welcome.
Appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah.
I have been wanting to talk to you for a while on a podcast because we just every time we have a conversation, it's been fantastic. So to get people spun up on your background, it's fun. I don't even know where to go. Okay, so you started as a wrestler, went to MMA, UFC. Decided that was boring and decided to become a professional bull rider. That's kind of
long story short. There you guys have it. That's the podcast.
Thanks for coming.
We'll see you next week.
So is that kind of where you're at now, right? So
yeah, and it was literally that easy as well. Yeah.
So let's start kind of back at the beginning. You were kind of a superstar stud, like high school wrestler, right?
Superstar, maybe not so much. Stud, absolutely. Yeah, I was pinning people left and right.
Good. So at what point did MMA start entering the picture?
So a little background. I wrestled in middle school and then obviously going into high school. And after high school, my two older brothers, I come from a big family, so I was getting beat up all the time with, four brothers.
A lot.
3 older brothers, 1 younger brother, which, I'd get beat up, and then I had to go show my little brothers the moves, what
Somebody's
I just learned, right?
There you go.
So, just naturally tough. And what my brothers did, I did. So right after high school is like that. Like, okay, I know I'm not going to college because I strongly dislike school, right? So that's option.
Okay, that's out.
My 2 older brothers, they ended up going to the military. So I'm like, okay, that's the route I'm going, So let's take a year off, kind of think about it. I was working construction, making what I thought was good money. So I'm pretty happy, making money, drinking on the weekends, got my girl with me. I'm like living good life. Yeah. So my buddy and I were both like, okay, like when should we really kind of think about going into the military, right?
Because you're looking around going,
Yeah. So another friend of mine's like, hey, man, you should join this gym, Nashville MMA. It's in Nashville. You're a really good wrestler. You transition really well into jiu-jitsu. And I was like, perfect. I'll do that to get in shape to lead me into the military. Yeah. So I ended up doing that, and I kind of just walked in like, hey, I want to fight. They're like looking at me like, yeah, we hear that every single day. So 6 months of this, 2 years of that, and I'm like, right, I'm not doing any of that. Yeah. But I will do jiu-jitsu, and I will sign up to just get back into wrestling, right? So I ended up taking the gi, or jiu-jitsu in the gi. It's gi and no gi. And they put me in the gi, and they're like, you have to be a purple belt in order to fight for us, to represent us. And I was like, all right, cool. So I get in and take my classes, and I'm just taking everybody down, pinning them, And they're like, hey, you got to submit the guy. You can't just do this. So I start to learn submissions here and there, and now I'm beating, like, as a white belt, I'm beating blue belts, I'm beating purple belts, and, there wasn't a lot of brown and black back then. Yeah. Like, there were still, like, this is,
early days of MMA, right?
Yeah, exactly, where black belts are like, whoa, we got one coming to our gym. We don't have one here. They're coming to our gym, right? So it's kind of a big deal. But my coach was like, hey, go against, BT. And I was like, this guy. Yeah. Like, just real skinny, kind of scraggly looking dude. And I'm like, it's going to be easy. Dude tapped me like 10 times in 5 minutes. I'm like, what the heck just happened, right? So I was like, I got to learn this whole, like, gi thing, right? Because he's grabbing my collars, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm getting myself into submissions that I don't even know, So
you're looking up like, what the hell happened?
I was like, hey, can we just take this off? Let's get back to wrestling and whatnot. So this gym actually fought for MMA to get legalized in the state of Tennessee, and so that's how how old it was, those days of it getting legalized in new states, and so they fought for it, and it got legalized in the state of Tennessee. So they decided to put on their own first sanctioned show in the state. And they're like, hey, didn't you say you wanted to fight? Yeah. They're like, well, we're putting one on of our own at the Nashville State Fairgrounds. Would love to have you fight for us, And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I get to, do this. It's like, it's in 2 weeks. And I was like, wow. Okay, sure. I'm not taking any type of stand-up at this point, just gi jiu-jitsu. Yeah. and I'm kind of beating guys, so I feel like, oh yeah, I'm good. So I work with a coach for like 2 weeks, and then I end up fighting. I've never been more scared. I'm like scared, nervous, just like what did I talk myself into here, right? In my life, and a coach said, hey, you know, like nobody's expecting you to win. You know, like you're not fighting for a belt. This is just another, you know, you do this every single day when you come into the gym. And I was like, okay, that did like make me feel better for like 3 seconds. So I'm getting my hands wrapped up. And so long story short, I go in there and I win. And like half my high school's there, you know, Dustin's fighting, you know, like let's all go. So sold the place out. All my friends, family was there. It was amazing. And I beat the guy, I think in like the first or second round, because we go out there. And I'm pretty nervous, so I'm like a little hesitant, and then just without even taking a second guess, I just shoot on the guy, take him down, and I got him on his back, like pinning him. My coach's like, you gotta punch him. Like, yeah. So
the striking comes into play now.
You did.
I never taught you that.
Right, so I move into mount, and I just, you know, base up, and I'm just like pounding this guy in the face until the referee stops it. And so I ended up winning, and you know the crowd's going crazy, and I'm just like, I think I'm so cool, right? And then on Monday, I was on the front page of the newspaper.
That's awesome.
Like Tennessee, you know, got MMA legalized. We put on our first, you know, sanctioned show, so we're not in the back doing it illegally anymore. Super cool. Hometown guy. Dustin Ortiz, you know, used to wrestle for Franklin High School where he graduated, fought and won. And so there I am on the front page, like
beating a guy.
So the military is out the window, you know? So that's really when I decided, like, dude, this is what I'm going to do, you know? And
did you look back on that? Like how, you know, like, oh my God, like you were a toddler at that point, right? Compared to the skill set you have now, right? Yeah,
I'll drive by high school now and be like, these kids think they're all that. You know, it's like big book bags, and I'm like, they don't even know, you know. And that was just like a year out of high school. So it's crazy to think that I was getting in a cage, fighting, and you know, like putting it all out there.
So that happened. At what point then you're like, okay, now I got to figure out the stand up? I mean, you probably. I mean, the good news is you won. Right. The bad news is you won, because then you're thinking like, oh yeah, well this isn't tough. But I mean, at that point you start saying, okay, now I've really got to take this stuff seriously. Like I can't just wing it or wing it.
So looking back on it, when I first signed up, I went back and told my dad, because I was living with him at the time. I was like, hey, I need like 2 years and I'm going to make it, you know? But really, looking back, that was just an excuse not to have to go to work every day, you know, or not have to do the military. Like, that was just kind of my out, I'm pretty sure. But at the time, like, I think I really did think, like, man, I could do this, you know, because of my wrestling background. And the coaches were giving me this sense of, like, hey, like, we're going to put a little time into you, you know? So after that fight, I was like, oh, I can't do this. And they were filling my head with that, right? And so what really kind of set it off was that because I was still working So I'd go to work construction all day, and then I'm in traffic, like falling asleep, going to practice, right? After that, I think I took a couple more fights. I lost my second fight at a higher weight class. And I was like, oh, I got to take this serious, you know, if I'm going to do this. And then they offered to pay for me to train full time. Whatever you're making working construction, we'll pay you that to just train. And then that's when I was like, okay, I'm for real doing this.
Now you're in.
Yeah, I'm in.
So what was the hardest? So because you had a wrestling background, was it the striking that of all? First off, let's take it. What disciplines do you need to know in order to be credible in getting into a cage? It's striking, it's grappling, it's like, what are those kind of areas that?
Well, to build credibility, I mean, I think you really have to have, you know, toughness and heart. You can be a super skilled guy, and then as soon as somebody kind of turns, you know, the tide on you, and you start to, you know, progress within each round, and they're starting to bully you or whatever, and you kind of give up, then you're not going to really gain too much respect that way. Right?
But if you're just grappling, for example, if you're just a grappler, do people get pissed off because you don't have a stand-up game? Is there always an excuse on that, or
no? So you just have to be really good at one thing at least to get in there, or you have to be a pretty basic concept, have a concept of all of them, right? Because you'll have a champion who's Like Demetrius Johnson, he was in my weight class, 125. Just not too long ago, he posted a picture, or maybe this was a couple years now, but I've been away for a little bit. But he posted a picture that he was just a white belt in the gi.
Yeah.
But he's, flying armbarring guys in the cage, right?
Yeah,
It's like, whoa, you're not a white belt, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But like in the martial arts of jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
he's a white belt, right? So you don't really have to be super credential in anything. You just have to be like, he was super knowledgeable across
the
and
board.
how to blend them all together. So he'd be wrestling and grappling. And as soon as it went to the feet, he didn't even hesitate to transition into Muay Thai or kickboxing or boxing. And that's what made him so good. Whereas other guys, they'll be really good at jiu-jitsu. And so they're the whole time with no stand-up, and they're trying to figure out how to take this to the ground. Khabib, he was a great wrestler. I think that's what got him to the level that he was at. And on his way up, he was learning the striking deal, right?
So for
and
you
they just
then-
matched at the perfect time to make him world champion.
So as an opponent, then you're looking at his weakness and going, okay, if I know that, then I want to keep that person standing up, right? Or as soon as he goes into that,
Great question.
That's a great question.
So that's a great question. So because some people will look at it from that, like, what is he good at? What am I good at? And then I will try to maybe beat him at his weakness, or do I try to bring him into my strength? Right. So am I going to take this fight because I'm a stand-up guy? And then he's a ground guy. Am I going to work my stand-up? To strengthen my skill, or am I going to work my ground game to strengthen that in case he gets me to his?
Good point.
So that's very like which coach do you have? What is your coach thinking, and then what are you thinking, and then what do you guys come up with together? Because I've seen it both ways. I've seen guys. Let's just kind of use that as a basic example. They spend the whole camp working on their stand up, and then they do get taken down and they get submitted, right? Or vice versa, they work on their stand-up the whole time, then they get to the ground, and then they get right back up. And then they're able to win because they, did their thing
Get
the
back
whole
to their
time.
strengths.
Right? Or not even go to the ground.
Yeah.
They worked their stand-up so much in defense that they kept it standing the whole time.
Because
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So it's,
Yeah, because one can think also like, since the opponent, you're playing chess, right? Because what's weird about this sport, right? It's a one-on-one sport. But you're constantly evolving your game. You're constantly evolving your talent. They're constantly evolving. So you're trying to assume that you're playing chess, right? Well, if they're thinking that, then I'm going to do this. And if they're thinking that I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. For example, you could work on your ground game if you're a stand-up guy. They take you to the ground saying, oh, I got this. And all of a sudden you're like surprising the hell out of them, right? I mean, that could be a tactic, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then and you think like, because all you have to feed off of is their prior fights, right?
Exactly.
And some guys will keep it the same their whole careers, and then some guys you look at one fight and you're like, dude, this is a completely different fighter from the last.
Just coming
like,
to the
what
fight,
did he do, right?
preparing for that
he
fight.
He did prepare for that fight, right? So you can base your fights out, right? They'll offer you a fight, and if you're ready, then you take it, obviously, because your career is so small. But the smart guys and girls work on what they are least good at in between those fights, right? Because everybody likes to look good on the pads. They like to look good on Instagram and do their thing, right? Who doesn't? So, but the guys who are and girls who are really serious about it, I see them working more on what they're least good at. We all have those.
And the other strategy is weight class, right? So what was your determination on which weight? I mean, obviously there's physics involved, there's biology involved, but I mean you're not going to be probably at a 200-pound class, we get that. But what
I am now, 2,000-pound class, 2,000-pound class.
Like, so when you decide which weight class you want to be in, is it based off of what your capability, what you're feeling the best as, or what the competition looks like? How do you determine what weight class do you want to be in?
So for me, it was like where I cut weight my whole life since like 6th grade,
as a wrestler, you're used to that.
And I know my body and like where I feel best at. So 125, when I first started, they didn't even have 125. It was 35 and 45 in the WEC. And so I was kind of like bulking up, trying to be like, hey, I'm gonna be a 35 or a 45er, right? And then the UFC bought them out, and then they collided, and then they introduced the 25 because there were so many guys they were small 35ers. They could go down. So it's like, hey, let's make this exciting, fast-paced fight or weight class for these guys. And then so I was like, thank you. I think this is more my style, right? Yeah. And because I wrestled 130 in high school and college.
Yeah.
My
and
senior
so
year.
So
I was like, man, I would.
Then?
Yeah, I would feel best there.
Okay, so if you try to do 135, you would feel.
I don't know.
Slower?
I haven't done that yet.
Okay, but
yeah, because I cut from. So I walk around between like 50 and 55. If I'm not. Now I'm 55 because, you know, I'm in a different activity that requires, you know, just strength and just overall, like I feel better, a little bit heavier, right? Stronger. Whereas like in fighting, the lower I would go, now I'm the same height. Yeah. I got the same reach or, you know, same reach as these guys. Yeah. And it kind of leveled the playing field and or made me a little bit higher because I felt good going down there and then bouncing back. Because we weigh in on Friday, 125 on the dot or 126 if you're not fighting for a title. And I would see these guys like just dying, looking for the first place to sit down. And going to weigh-ins, and I'm just like, I'll fight you right now.
Let's go. You're feeling comfy, which is rare,
I'm feeling
right?
Good.
Because,
So I always just felt like I would have mentally a little bit of advantage. But then there's some guys like Frankie Edgar. He's like 5'6", 5'7", maybe fighting at 155, walking around at 155, and he was the champion for years. You know, and is like. So some guys were like, hey, you don't have to cut all this weight because you're not depleting yourself. You have all that fluid around your brain, so you can take a punch. When you deplete yourself, you know, the more you get punched, because that is part of the game, right? It's easier to happen. You get dropped a little bit easier. So
we had Ian
Larios.
Talking about
wow, we learned a lot about that.
Absolutely.
Right.
So the best guy you can have on to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because he's worked with so many guys. It's like, and he'll be able to tell you nutritious wise, like when you deplete yourself that much, how much easier it is to get knocked out, you know? And so I would deplete myself from, you know, 46 at the beginning of camp to 26, which is 20 pounds. And then be able to go in there. And I mean, I've taken my hits to the head, you know, but I've never been knocked out, you know, and so I felt like I could take this and keep going and keep handing them out just as equally good. So that's how I kind of settled at 35, but I mean 25. So now if I were to go back, everybody's like 35 is your thing. You're like you're so much bigger now and like you're older, so it might be harder to cut that weight. So my next one, if I ever were to think about this, you know, like really seriously, because it's always like, you know, I know any room I walk into, like, I got that guy.
I could take him.
But but that's different from like a real training camp and fighting, right? So if I were to put myself through that and want to do it, right, it would probably be 35 just to see how that feels, how much more pop I have. Exactly. Ian,
well, and what's funny is we talked earlier, right? Most people talk themselves out of something. Like, I'm not ready. I'm not going to do this. You spend, I think you're more dangerous because you talk yourself into stuff because you walk in and go, oh yeah, I can do that. Absolutely. Like, you're
I
one of the rare
that.
people. It's like, I can talk myself into doing something crazy like that. So,
and the older I get and the more like, I think it's more of a culture thing where people are talking people out of doing things because maybe their experience or whatever, it wasn't worth it for them. And so when I tell people what I do and what I've done and records that I hold and stuff like that, they're just like, wow, you did all that? And I'm like, like, you're still doing that? I'm like, it keeps me alive. It's like, I kind of feel like I'm breaking that mold of like, no, you need to, you know, get a job and play it safe. It's like, that's not life to me.
The people that we've talked to and had in on the podcast that have been successful like you walked in with like just not knowing enough to talk themselves out of it. So they kind of get in there and they're just kind of like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to go and try it. And they do it. And then they're successful. It's not, they can't talk themselves out of it because they don't know the bad side of it. Right.
It's
just like,
you probably had older brothers like, well, you know, my older brother hit me harder than that. So
exactly.
So when you're in MMA, so I'm assuming the pinnacle is UFC, right? That's where everybody's trying to get to. And then you made it to the UFC at 125?
125,
right? And so Mexico City, You're getting prepared. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I love this. So you recorded the fastest knockout in your weight class in UFC history. How many seconds?
15 seconds.
15 seconds.
I think it was 14, but it's recorded as 15.
You're going down to this day saying it's 14 seconds.
Yeah.
So tell us the situation about that. You were preparing for this.
Yeah.
I mean, how does one get to a 14-second knockout?
Yeah, so that was a great camp because there's a little smack
Nice.
talk going on, you know.
Yeah.
Not from me,
Yeah.
but from this guy, because he had trained at Team Alpha Male, which was a camp an hour and a half, I believe, from where I was at. And I had gone up there previous, I think probably 2 years prior to that, and did a little training up there, and I had sparred with this guy. Well, I was fighting a week later. I think it was actually here in Nashville. And so I was getting ready for a fight. And within that week, if you're sparring on Saturday, you're just going through the motions. You're game planning.
You're kind of tapering, getting ready to go.
Tapering, yeah. And this guy's trying to take me out. And I'm just like looking at his coach. I'm looking around like, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I don't want to cuss on your podcast, but
You can
I'm
do
not
that.
going to, be a pussy and be like, no, dude, you're going too hard, right? So I'm looking around like hoping that somebody's going to stop this.
Yeah.
And sure enough, your eye favor comes over and he's like, hey, bro, he's fighting next week. Like, you guys are just moving, you know? And so he just kind of kept at it, and I was like, all right, whatever, like, ego.
Yep.
I'm just going to let this guy be who he is. Like, that's cool. I'm not going to go with you again, right?
Yeah.
So once I accept this fight because I was like, oh, yeah, I can beat this guy easy, right?
Yeah.
And he starts chirping that he knocked me out in practice.
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, what? Like, okay, I'm like, for real deal.
Excuse me?
Like, yeah, exactly. So once I hear that, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to look up what he's doing. I don't want to hear any interviews that he's done.
Yeah,
I'm just going to do me, and I'm going to stay focused. So it's in Mexico City. So I go, and I'm like, when I train, there's no cheating. I'm strict on my diet. I'm all in. I've lived in Tennessee through most of my UFC career, and then I would fly out to California as soon as I got the call, and I would spend a month or 2 or 3, depending on. As soon as I got the call, I booked my flight and I was out there. Right.
So what is the ideal amount of time you need between like when you get that call?
So it kind of varies. If for guys who train consistently, like 6 weeks is ideal, right? But if you're kind of just training once a day, or you got a part-time job that you're working, because it's not going to pay all the bills when you first start, right? For me, I was back home in Tennessee, and I was just kind of working on the farm, doing whatever, training once or twice a day. So for me, it'd be like, a good 8-10 weeks would be nice. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would go out there and Mexico City, high elevation. I bought the altitude tent. I was sleeping in that every single night.
Nice.
I read this book called The Oxygen Advantage. So I started taping my mouth shut so I could just breathe, nasal breathing.
Okay.
Super
Okay.
important. So I was going to all because this is high.
You were all in.
Yeah, I'm going to outpace this guy.
Yeah.
And beat the crap out of him because I know that he said he knocked me out.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And so just going into the fight, I was just all in, just 100% dedicated. Switching stances, you see it right in the beginning of that in that fight. I'm switching stances, and my coach is like, okay, he's gonna come in, he's gonna come in hot, he's gonna come in heavy because he said he knocked you out, so he's gonna try to prove it, you know. He's like, sometimes we have to bite down on our mouth guard and lay out our combinations that we've been drilling, which was uppercut, hook, cross, right? I don't think I did that exact one.
Yeah.
But I threw an overhand, uppercut, and then an overhand. And it's just all stuff that you drill, right?
So it becomes rote. I mean,
he comes out. I'm kind of like trying to juke him a little bit. And he comes in. I'm like, oh, I turn away because I'm like, oh, he's for real, right? He's coming at me. It's just what we talked about. So then the second time I knew it was coming again. And it's just put your head down and throw that overhand. Yeah. So I did. I put my head down, kind of looking out of my peripheral, threw that overhand, and when I looked up, he looked like a mine. Just ran into the glass, right? And I was like, just started machine gun punching him as fast as I could, and he went down and just hammer fist, and the ref pulled me off, and I looked back like, was there more? Is this over? You just never know. And it's so what's funny about it is after when you're in the back, because everybody goes to the green room, right? The UFC has a green room. You go back there, you get to watch the other fights on the TV, and there's food and all this good stuff. And a little weird when you lose because now you're
Yeah, you're like, hey, what's up?
Right? So, but it's cool. So you go back there, and when somebody comes in and you're maybe beat up, you fought 15 minutes, you're cut, you're whatever, and this dude just had a first round knockout. You kind of look at him like, that was cool, but like, damn, dude, I wish that was me, right?
Yeah.
And I always kind of, because I had tough fights. And
So
for the first time, that was
Walking
me,
back
like
on,
15 seconds, walked back unscathed, didn't even
even
break a sweat.
Exactly, yeah.
Who's
Worked harder.
Yeah, it's like,
it warming
I
up
could take
and
another
everything.
one if you guys are up for it. Let's go.
Let me get your spot.
The crowd must have just like gone apeshit crazy, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it was just,
yeah.
I mean, that's got to be an intoxicating feeling, right? You get in, everyone's going crazy. You hit that, everyone,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, right?
Right.
And I think we talked about this before, but it must feel like, on one hand, it's great that you got that. On the other hand, though, but you were training for 8 weeks, like you were dialed in, and before you know it, you're looking around like, I guess we go get tapas. I mean, you know what I mean? You're like, what do I do now?
Feel pretty good.
Yeah.
So tell folks how tough is it to stay at that UFC level? Because I think there's this.
Because you don't have a season, right? We have a season, right? We have an off 3 or 4 months or more, like in between, that we can actually let ourselves relax a little bit, bring our bodies back again. But you guys need to stay on until the phone rings, right? At least some level.
Yeah, but it's not just that though.
Right.
UFC's it's a business at the end of the day, right?
100%.
So they want to make sure that they have the right. They want the right fighters, not only in the right, but I mean they're trying to make a spectacle. I don't want to say like WWE by any means, but I mean they still got
it's entertainment.
It's entertainment, 100%.
It's
entertainment. Remember that. I want to come back to that.
I guess that's my point. And so when you, it's not just you can't just be a good fighter. You have to be a good character. Is that a off base thing to say, or is that?
No, so let's if I don't lead into that, bring me back to that.
Okay.
So because I want to answer the question of how hard is it to stay there, right? And a great man, Burt Watson, he used to work for the UFC, kind of the hype man, right? He would hype everybody up in the back, and I don't even know if that was on purpose. That was just who he was, right? But you love to hear his voice, you love to see him. Yeah. And he would lead fighters out. He would come back in, 5 minutes, and we walk, and you're like, 5 minutes? Oh, 2 minutes. And he was just on top of it, right? And so he would lead you out to the cage and position you and all that good stuff. And one thing that he would say every single show was, it's hard to get here. It's even harder to stay.
Yeah.
And I just like, if I could tell all fighters that, and not just in the UFC, but as a career, it's hard to be a fighter. It's hard to do it for a long time.
Yeah.
So get in, make your money, take your hits as least amount as possible, right?
Yeah.
Fulfill whatever you're trying to, because at the end of the day, fighting is you will grow out of it.
Yeah.
You're not a 90-year-old man looking for fights.
Yeah. There's no Tom Brady fighting.
Some of that anger is going to go away. Some of that desire to be in the battle is going to go away.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so that was something that he said, and it's never been more true. Yeah. So once you get to that high level, you have guys who train year round. After the fights, they're the first guys in the gym, because that's kind of some coaches distill that, like, hey, look at this guy, he fought on Saturday, Monday he's back in the gym grinding. And for me, I don't think that's, you need to take some time.
But you're a target at that point too. I mean, you just knocked a guy out in 14 seconds. 13, we'll debate.
15 seconds.
But recorded. By the end of this, it's going to be 9 seconds.
It was
really fast.
In 3.2.
Really fast.
Fell coming out. But you have a target now too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's like, wait a minute, that guy just did that. So he's there's people putting you on their wall, right? And it's like, he's the guy.
Or on their punching bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they're coming after you. So So tell us about that entertainment portion of it. Then it's
right. So then leading into that, which is like, now it's an entertainment industry, right? Like the UFC, it's a business, but it's an entertainment business, right? So now you have guys who, they're pretty good fighters, but you put this mic right in front of them, and they're going to say some things that are just like, have you laughing, or like, I can't believe he said that. And with social media, they're turning them into memes, and they're, and people are taking it and running with it. And then you're popular, you go from like 10,000, 20,000 followers to 1 million, 100,000 and overnight, right? And then you're getting tweeted about and all that good stuff. So little cool fun fact for me, at least. You guys might think it's cool. Travis Barker, drummer.
Oh, yeah.
So he tweeted at me, said that he didn't even like make it to the fridge and back or something like that. That it's like, holy crap, Dustin Ortiz, And I was just like, wow, so that's like the eyes that you have on you, you know?
Serious,
So that 8 weeks of just hard sleeping at altitude in a tent, you know, grind. And it's not just that 8 weeks, but this is years that I've been doing this, you know? So it's not the 8 weeks that made that fight. It's all the years that I've been putting into makes it worth it, you know? And it's like, that's the kind of work that you have to put in for that little second of whoever's watching you.
And
know?
that clip lives on YouTube, and it will be
Let's
watched.
repost it.
And it will be, we're going to throw it in the middle here while we're talking. I'm going to drop it in the YouTube.
In flyweight history, I think the one before that was a minute and something.
Yeah.
You know, minute and 40 maybe.
Yeah.
So does that change does that start changing sort of your mind at that point? Because you're like, oh crap, now I have to perform. Now I have to, like, do you feel like an added bit of pressure when you're in that you should be saying crazy stuff? You can say crazy stuff right now if you want. The 9 people watching.
I've never. Is this live?
No.
Okay.
No, we're recording this.
My brother-in-law asked, so I had to.
I
completely forgot to ask you. That's fine. So if it was, I'd be like,
it's live on tape.
So no, I always put so much pressure on myself. Mm-hmm. Like growing up, my 2 older brothers are twins, and then my little brother and my little sister are twins, and we're kind of like the 5 from the same parents. So we kind of never really got separated until a little bit older. So 2 sets of twins, and I'm right in the middle. I always was like fighting for attention, so to speak, right? And so I always put pressure on myself to be something, to do something, whatever. And I always just kind of felt like I would like working on the farm. I would like going and doing this, construction, blah, blah, blah. But after a couple months, I'm like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
God bless whoever thinks this is for them, right? And settles for it. But like, this is not me. So I always put that so much pressure on myself. And after a knockout, people expect it. But for me, it was just like, that's kind of unrealistic because I didn't even expect to get that.
Seriously.
Right? So like, am I going to go bum rush somebody within 15 seconds just to beat it? It's not the smartest thing to do, right? So he kind of was
not unless you want them to have the record.
Exactly right. No, that's my record.
It's mine.
So I'm going to wait 15 seconds. I don't get on the other end of that.
Yeah.
But no, I've never felt really any added pressure of like people recognizing me and saying, oh, this and that. And I'm just kind of like, dude, I'm just a regular dude. Like, it's cool that I've accomplished that, but I put so much pressure on myself. I'm not going to let somebody else's, thoughts and whatever.
Do you feel a sense of pressure, though, to become a character? Because you see that that's working for other people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I do. I did.
Did you develop a character or?
No, I never had a nickname. I never, my whole life I never had a nickname.
Really?
Yeah. My brother will call me like Junior or, Dust. Now I'm Uncle Dust. Buddy calls me his aunt, cute as can be. She'll say, oh, Dusty. Dusty's here. So I'll get that from time to time. But no, I never had a nickname or anything.
But you didn't have a
that.
pressure to feel like you needed that.
But I felt pressure just on the sense of, all the champions were known for, kind of a character.
Yeah, exactly.
You almost form that on your way up.
Yeah.
And getting into the business aspect of it, especially like we're talking about, it's now entertainment industry.
Yeah.
So with that being, said, it's like you do have to form a character to be something, right? To sell.
Yeah.
To sell.
Yeah.
And some people can just sell themselves. But the people who create a character that people love or hate,
which
right?
works just as well.
Yeah, Jake Paul's proving that. So.
Yeah, right.
They seem to excel a little bit more, right? Yeah. So, and our champion was Demetrius Johnson, in my opinion, the greatest MMA fighter of our time, right? Right there with John Jones. The guys are just unbelievable. But he didn't sell, right? Because he wasn't known for really anything. He was just winning. He was quiet. He played his video games, and it was just kind of like there's no really – he's not going to go because he wasn't getting paid what he thought he was. There's no above and beyond. Whereas like John Jones, like he's out partying, getting himself in trouble, and people know him as that, trying to be a good guy, which is like, bro, just you're not
be yourself.
that, right?
Yeah, you're not that.
So he kind of – and then with Conor McGregor coming in, he really took it to a whole new level of this is a character – that I've formed and am going to uphold with this the whole time. And he did, and he just went through the roof. And you have younger guys with this new generation of doing that, and they're exceeding the harder workers, the guys who, ultimately, in my opinion, would deserve a title shot, but they're getting chosen over these guys because
ratings
their name is so big.
Because it sells tickets.
Right? They got like 3 UFC fights.
Yeah.
They're choosing that guy over a guy who has 10 to 15 who's earned it, who's really earned it, you know, but nobody really knows, like, oh, he's fighting?
It's all about views. It's all about views.
Yeah.
You got to get people watching.
You got McGregor, like, wide receivers when they get a touchdown are walking like McGregor when they're done. I mean, the guy created it. He's got not the greatest whiskey, but he's got a whiskey, right? So
I haven't tried it.
I mean, so he was smart enough to turn that, which is cracks me up.
And I see that now, like more clearly now that I've stepped away from it.
Well, if you go back, we'll create a character for you.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you create this character that's really not you, you have to hold that up. So 20 years later, when you're retired and you're just hanging out, everyone expects that character, and you're just like, well, that's not me. I don't want to do that anymore. You still have to do that.
Right.
You're going to have to keep that character going, which is like you want it to be more like you.
Yeah.
So that you didn't have to work so hard later on.
Right. And so it's cool. It's cool for me that like people know me, know who I am, know that I'm a fighter. Yeah. And I kind of like. I have a resting bitch face for girls.
Your photos, you're a mean son of a bitch. Right? You're scary. You're a scary man.
No smile.
Yeah, so
your pictures.
I've talked to people. It's like, man, I've been wanting to say what's up, but you're just in your zone. Like I was a little nervous, and you're just like the coolest dude. So it's like that's kind of a care. Like I don't care to be like center of attention and all this like fighting for your like. Like no, I'm just. And then once you get to know me, you're like, dude, that's a cool dude. Like I could hang out with him, right? Yeah. And I think that's more of a character that I want to be than a super well known character.
Well, and when I first met you, I thought I thought you were going to be just like because your persona that you give off. I mean, you've got a look.
I think you were eyeballing me like, hey, guy.
Damn. Right now. I mean, just let's go. I was looking at your steak you were eating. I'm like, can I have that? Yeah. But you find out you're fun to talk to. I mean, you're really open. You're really fun to talk to. And it's just like when I left, I'm like, it's just surprising because when you see you on the photos and you see you're fighting. I mean, I'm assuming your mindset. I'm always curious about this. 2 things I'm curious about: on the way in and then the walk in. Right. So on the way in, it's always fun. What are your thought process when you're like standing across? Like, is it truly like I'm going to rip your freaking head off, or is it more of a quiet confidence? I mean, what do you try to portray when you're staring down like somebody at the weigh-in?
Yeah. Oh, at the weigh-in or in the cage?
At the weigh-in.
Both. At the weigh-in, okay. So
and then at the cage. I mean, when you're walking in, you're
So my weigh-in approach is my very first UFC fight. It was in Brazil against a Brazilian guy. First fight of the night. Yeah. Okay. And so. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there. I'm like, who signed me up for this? Right? So actually, funny story. When the UFC called, I was in a push-up contest with my buddy, right? And coach calls me over. He's like, "Do you want to fight in the UFC next week?" And I was like, or in 2 weeks, I think it was. Yeah. And I was like, and my buddy who I'm doing a push-up contest with, he's like, yes, he does. And I was like, oh yeah. So I was just like so taken back, right?
That's funny.
And so some things happened, and then I finally got to make my debut, right? And so it was against a Brazilian guy in Brazil, and I'm like, no, I want to fight here. I want to go clear over there. And so first time in Brazil, fighting a guy, and we pull up to this, I'm guessing an old soccer stadium. So the seats are like all concrete.
Oh my God.
It's hot. Yeah. And I'm like, this is my experience. So this is the UFC, right? And I'm warming up in the back, and I can hear them out there. I mean, this is loud.
Yeah.
So just kind of fast forward a little bit. When you go to Vegas, nobody really shows up until like the last 3 fights, right? It's pretty your real fans or somebody who flew in for a UFC are there. Yeah. But the last 3 fights, it's jam packed, right? So I didn't know that. I thought that this is what I'm getting myself into. Yeah. And the whole place, I feel like it's just rocking. I'm trying to warm up. And you know? And I have this other guy's like, oh, this is your first fight? And I was like, yeah, first fight in the UFC. He's like, what fight are you? Like on the card. And I'm like, I'm first fight. He's like, oh, I'm glad that's not me. I'm like, dude, what? I don't want to hear that. Right. So we walk up. They position us. Bert's like, it's showtime. Hyping me up. I'm like, all right, yeah. And we we walk and they put the camera in your face, and I'm like, I got this. So I don't like to just stand. I'm pacing back and forth.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've trained with the best. I'm here. I'm ready. Let's go. You got this. And this is all I'm saying to myself. Like, I can win. I'm fucking badass. And I'm pacing back and forth, and Lady's like, camera's on in 5, and you got to be right there. And she's like, come back to the center. And I'm like, no, I'm not pacing. Right? 5, 4, 3. And then the camera comes on you. And like, I'm pretty sure it's either right before then or in that moment, I look back to my coach because the place is just loud.
Yeah.
And I look back at him and I just start busting up laughing. Like, we both start busting up laughing. I don't know, should I be scared? Should I be like ready, nervous? And I start laughing like, oh God, this is crazy. And these guys are like, they're like flicking me off, giving me the bird, you know. They're saying like, "Ooh, I'm away, ooh, I'm away," which means you're gonna die in Portuguese.
Nice.
So I'm like, yes.
I don't know what that means, but I
like it.
Wait a minute.
And I knew it wasn't good when they're not giving me the bird, right? So I'm just like, how do I be, right? And so I don't even know. I would have to go back and watch because I think I'm just like as stiff as a board, walking. And it was just hot, and you know, I know, like, all right, we get out, take your clothes, you know. Take your clothes off doesn't sound good.
Take
your warm-up
stuff. Warm-ups off.
Get into your fight shorts and, you know, hug your coach if you want to. And I was like, So we do that, and then I walk into the cage, and a bug flew on me. And I was like, whoa, what is that? And it's like overwhelming, just like feeling, and it's hot, and like the mat is like almost sandy, and I'm kind of like rubbing my feet like, oh, what is this? You know? And then I just go to my corner, and at that moment, you're just kind of looking at each other, right? And then every fight is different. So that one, I was just kind of looking at him like, oh, I'm gonna, this is a dog fight, because that's really all. I'm not super skilled, so this is a dog fight, right? And so that fight was so special because it was like an out of body experience. So I literally felt like I was sitting on the cage with my feet crossed, watching me fight. Like, bro, you should listen to your coach. He was saying so much, but I just couldn't let go. And it was just like literally, I was just watching myself. We go into the third period, and he's like, hey, you need to land this combo. It's there. You got it. Just let your hands go. And I was just like, no, I need to take him down and finish him. And he's like, okay, that's what you think?
Let's do it.
Because that's just all. It was a super close fight, but he's a Brazilian in Brazil. And it's happening so fast. I don't know what's going on. I'm just watching myself from the inside, you know? So I was like, if I'm going to, if I'm going to win this fight for sure and secure it, this is what I have to do. And he's like, yeah, do it. And so that's what happened. I ended up going out there, taking him down, ground and pound, knocked him out, TKO in the third.
Nice.
But so from fight to fight, let's reverse. So that guy in that first fight, when he walked, I weighed in, because I was the underdog. So I weighed in first, and I go and stand in my position, and then I see him come out, get onto the scale, weigh in, and then he approaches me, right? And we face off. And he came in just so fast and so like aggressively and just looked into my soul. I felt like this overwhelming, like, bro, I'm about to cold cock you right now. Back up a little bit. And he just held it, and I just looked into his eyes like, I'm not going to back down at all. And that was so ingrained in me that I knew that that's what I wanted to do to every guy that I came across that I was going to face off against. And old statues, if you look at like some of the like Greek gods and stuff like that, their back foot is always up, so they're in like a motion of ready to like
kind of forward
movement.
Ready to...
And I was like, that's kind of what I want. So I was always like leaning forward, like I'm gonna bring the fight. Right? There's no back down in me. My foot's ready. I'm going forward. So whether I was the one, the underdog, which I was most of my career, I was like, come at me, and here we go. Or I'm coming off the scale, shake Dana's hand, and then I'm like in your face, like, here we go. So that's kind of that was my mentality of the face off right after weigh-ins.
I kind of feel like it's sort of like, wide receivers that have to have a Super Bowl dance. It's sort of like you got to develop your, like, what is that thing that's going to, and it must be, and you're getting all sorts of different sides. So you know what you're doing. There must be at some point you look at this guy like, oh, shit, or not. Or is it always, because the confidence you have, like, you have to be that, right? You can be no other way, but just like you said, I may not have the skill, but it's going to be a dogfight. I'm not leaving nicely. We're someone's going to get hurt before someone leaves, that kind of thing. It kind of feel like, but you've always had that though, right?
Right. And that's just kind of engraved in who I am, right? And I think that's more of a like, how did you grow up? How were you raised? Were your parents there? Were they not? Were you in a rough neighborhood? Were you in a nice neighborhood? And like, some people might grow up in a nice neighborhood, but they just have that dog in them that's like, this was my parents. I want this for myself, or I want to prove that I'm this great quarterback or this great football player or this great fighter. For me, it's just like, I'm just trying to fight and just prove like that I'm just something, not just like, so we came from a, super poor background and growing up really rough until we moved to Tennessee, one of the nicest places in the country right now, but it's just like always like I'm smaller guy.
You're fighting no matter what. Like every day you're fighting.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So that was just always in there. Yeah. And now I get to express it. And most of it was just naturally until I gained the technique. Right. Yeah. So when I was walking out in the beginning, it was all serious. Like, cameras on me, how do I act? Yeah. And then it turned into like, oh shit, like I get to do this. I'm kind of like moving around, showing people that it's like, this is now my comfort zone, right? And I'm like, I know the camera's on me. What are people, right in when you're transitioning, what are people thinking as you're walking out? And then it's like, I don't really care. Like, I'm happy. What's up? Yeah. I'm here. I'm moving. I'm loose. I've done everything that I can possibly do, and I'm focused, right? Yeah. So that's another thing. To answer your question, when you first get into the cage, right? So I always kind of like approach the cage like, okay, now it's time to work. I'm gonna enter aggressively. Like, I want to feel the cage. I want to kind of do maybe a forward roll or a couple shots to feel where I'm at, and then I just start pacing. And in the beginning, that was like that dog ready to be let off the leash. I'm just pacing until somebody says go. Or like horses, when they're about to race, they're like, you got to hold them back, and then you let them go. So that was kind of my approach in the beginning. But as my career went on, I'm like, no, I know I have that dog, right? So I want to stay calm because he's ready to go. And so I started. When I was sparring and training in a comfortable gym I go to every single day, I would picture that I was in the cage. And then when I got into the cage, I would picture that I was in the gym.
Back at the gym.
Right? So I would vice versa And it was like, it just made me more comfortable. And I think that really worked for me because I didn't really want to look at the other guy because then, Mike Tyson said that he would get in and he would lock eyes. And I felt like if I locked eyes, I would have to keep that. So I was like, I'm not going to give him that. So as soon as... Because when you see a dude pacing, you're like, oh, dude's chill, bro.
It's like,
it's like, So I just always wanted that. That's funny. And then once we're ready to go. Same thing. I never wanted to sit down in between rounds. Because I never did that in training. Nobody comes in and brings a chair in training. That would be nice.
You need a water.
Right? Yes, I do. Oh, thank you.
Training of all the places you would really like to have it.
Skirts you, but that's not how it was. So I would always like face away from the guy. Because there's two coaches in and then one coach on the outside most of the time. So I'd listen. He would talk, and then he would talk and advise. Everybody's seeing different things. You got to stand up, ground. And I was just like, I just wanted to stand, be with my team, and let the blood flow naturally. Because you sit down, you're like, this feels good. A minute already? Like,
your energy starts to tip off.
So by the way, we can talk about this for like hours. This is
I could, yeah. Great.
So here you are, a fighter. All of a sudden, are you driving home and you see a bull and you think to yourself, "Well, I want to ride that."
Yeah.
Or how did how does a guy that's
what do I do next?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, let's see.
So I was driving in my old truck down, just going to my secret spot.
Yeah.
Had this girl with me. We're going to showing her the place. And